Hello, good evening. If you are currently watching this live, then today is Wednesday, May the 15th of 2024, and you have registered for the CalSOAP webinar that is basically intended for 11th graders and their families. And it's to try to give you some hints and some tips and strategies and resources for how to prepare for your senior year. It is coming, 12th grade is coming quickly. And what should you expect in your senior year of high school? What are some of the things that you should know about financial aid, about scholarships, about college applications? We're going to try to give you as many resources as we can. Although you'll notice that you're not able to type into the chat, if you look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, possibly under more where there are three dots, you should have a Q&A button that you can click. And under Q&A is where you can ask questions. I have Oscar Sanchez here. He is a UCSD student staff member for us. He's going to do his best to answer any questions by typing the answers directly to you. So if you have a question, you can make it anonymous or you can use your name. Either way, we welcome questions. But if he's not able to answer it, or if he thinks it might apply to a larger group, he's going to unmute himself and ask me the question out loud so that I can hopefully address your questions. So don't hesitate. If you have any, please go ahead and put them right in the Q&A. Of course, you also have my email address. I've been sending Zoom reminders, and so you are welcome afterward to email me questions. I know a question that we get a lot during these webinars is, can I have access to this slide deck? The answer is yes, you can. Tomorrow, I will be adding this presentation, this recording, to our CalSOAP website, calsoapsandiego.org, which has a webinars and blog section where we post recordings. And then when I post the recording, I will also post a link to the slide deck itself so that you can have that and you can go back and review it and click on links in it and that type of thing as well. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Again, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A and Oscar will read them out loud to me or answer them as needed. And I'm hoping that everybody is going to have a good journey for their senior year, but I will go ahead and get started and share my screen. I'm just not able to view the Q&A when I do start sharing. So let me go ahead and do that now. All right, so we are the San Diego and Imperial Counties CalSOAP project, or California Student Opportunity and Access Program. Again, this webinar is for current 11th graders who are about to finish their 11th grade year and go into their 12th grade year. And it's just some good information that you should know as far as planning for 12th grade. So who is CalSOAP and what do we do? Our mission is to increase college going rate, especially amongst our low income and first generation students. We have some type of presence, whether it's student staff or services that we provide in almost all high schools in the San Diego Unified District. And there's also certain schools that we support in the Sweetwater District, the Grossmont District, the Oceanside School District, and various Imperial County school districts. And our services might range from things like webinars like this, workshops, whether they're in person, online, Cash for College events, college fairs, summer college prep programs, middle school, college and career workshops, all kinds of things. It's all designed to help give parents and students better access to education after high school. So I'm going to start with something that is actually really important. And this is a timeline for some major things that are going to happen senior year. And I'm trying to stick mostly to academic and financial things here. I know that I didn't include, for example, prom, and I know that might be very important senior year. But kids, you'll already know that on your own. And so I'm going to stick to academic and financial timeline items to be aware of during your 12th grade year. Okay, so in August or September, whenever you start school, that is time, if you can, if you're able to get an appointment with your counselor, it's a good time to go over things like your transcript, to evaluate your course load. Are you in the right classes? Are you on track for graduation? Are you taking those A through G classes that are required either for your school district in order to graduate? And maybe even for some universities, they might even require a little bit above and beyond what your district or what your school requires. There are also some scholarships that open as early as summer and fall, that once you're a 12th grader, that is the really popular time to apply for scholarships. And that is a time when a lot of scholarship applications open. There are some applications for younger students, like juniors and younger, but a lot of scholarships, the vast majority, are intended specifically for graduating high school 12th graders, because they know that you'll be entering probably your first year of college the following fall. So this is a good time to research scholarships, and also, of course, to do your best in school to maintain a good solid GPA. October and November is what we usually refer to as college admission application season, especially for universities. Okay, if you're intending to go to a community college or trade school, they might not have their application open quite that early. However, if they are a four-year university, say we're talking about a CSU like San Diego State University, say we're talking about a UC like UC San Diego, let's say we're talking about a private school like Point Loma Nazarene, the University of San Diego, Stanford, maybe someplace out of state, whether it's public like Arizona State University, or whether it's private like Michigan Institute of Technology, MIT. Usually October and November, that's when their applications are open to be able so that you can submit it. And for most universities, their regular deadline to apply is November 30th. So before you even hit the end of that first semester of senior year, before you even are at winter break, November 30th, that's when a majority of university applications will be due. And November 30th is the last day. You don't want to wait till the last day to submit or to start on your application. But for most universities, that is their application deadline, is around November 30th. Might be a little bit later for certain private or out-of-state universities, but in the state of California, UCs and CSUs and a majority of privates, they're due November 30th. I will mention there are some students who do something called early action or early admission, where they're basically applying to college early. There are certain competitive, really selective colleges and universities that will allow you to do early action or early decision. When you're applying early, you'll probably find out if you got in early, and sometimes there's an agreement that goes along with it that says, hey, if we let you in during our early action cycle, and we accept you, you're then obligated to come to this school and say no to other colleges. So those deadlines might be a little bit earlier if you happen to be doing early action or early admission, but I would say for a vast majority of universities, that application deadline is going to be November 30th. So keep that in mind when you're planning things for senior year. All right. Now, typically, FAFSA or DREAM Act application, the financial aid form time, opens in October and it closes in March. Now, this year has been a really strange and different year for this year's 12th graders. So if you know someone who's a little older who's in 12th grade, you might have found out that the application didn't open until basically January this year because it's a new FAFSA. And although March 2nd is usually the priority deadline, first they extended that to April 2nd, and then they extended that to May 2nd. And they're still accepting applications now because there's been a lot of, shall we say, technological challenges with this new financial aid form and working out all the technical, things. But we do expect that for you, if you're an 11th grader now, that when you start 12th grade in fall of 2024, we think and hope that the FAFSA, which we hope will have worked out all its technical kinks, will be open October 1st, or at least sometime in the fall of 2024. So that is something that you want to prepare for, that application being open. Once it's open, you have until the priority deadline of March 2nd to fill out that FAFSA or DREAM Act. And I'll explain in a minute what the differences are between the two. Again, a priority deadline, that's for the state of California to be eligible for things like a Cal grant. It doesn't mean that you can't fill out the form after March 2nd. You can, but in order to make yourself the most eligible and the most competitive for aid, turning it in before March 2nd is what we recommend. I do also want to mention that there is another financial aid application form that not everybody has to do. But if you're going to a private or out-of-state college, they might also ask for something called the CSS profile. I jokingly refer to it, the CSS profile, as the FAFSA's nosy cousin. And it is a form that also asks you financial information about your income and your assets, but it gets a little bit more nosy than the FAFSA does, and it asks for even more financial information about your family income and your family assets, family size, and things like that. So just consider if you're applying to universities that might ask for the CSS profile, that's usually in addition to the FAFSA. Okay. So what happens when we get into spring? April through June, that's usually when you're finding out in March, sometimes earlier, but usually in March and April is when you're finding out where you were accepted to a university. They might also ask for a placement test if you need to take a certain math or English placement test. It's also time to make sure that you have all your financial aid in order, that you filled it out, that you're also continuing to apply for scholarships, and that you are finding out what is my financial aid award statement from each college. And then based on that, that's going to be probably one factor in your decision of where you're choosing to go to college. So you're in your 12th grade year, you're maintaining your good GPA, you continue to look for and apply to scholarships where you can. And also, this is a good time, usually somewhere around January, community college applications open. So sometimes either if a community college, if that is your first choice and you know that's where you're going to be applying, maybe you don't start that application till January or February, but usually sometime in the spring, that is when it's time to do a community college application. Now, say that you're thinking, I'm not going to go to a community college. I have a plan to go to X, Y, or Z university. And that's awesome. But sometimes life happens. Sometimes financial situations happen. Sometimes you need to be close to home, or there is a problem with budget, a budget shortfall in a family. It's always good to have a backup or safety school, and a community college can be that. The other thing is, even if you're like, well, I know I got into, let's say, UCSD, and I really want to go there, and I've told them yes already. If you fill out the community college application, number one, it's free. Unlike the university applications that have a fee per campus, a community college application is free. And even if you fill out that application, if you decide not to go to that community college, you just don't follow through with the other steps, and that's okay. And you go to a university your freshman year, and that is your path, and that's awesome. But I just want to encourage people to always have that in mind. The community college application, filling it out, there is no downside. It is free. It is an excellent backup plan if you want a backup plan. And if it is your first choice plan, that is excellent as well, because all of our community colleges have amazing programs, both vocational and also academic. And they all have pathways where you can take the right curriculum that if you want to then apply to transfer and finish your junior, senior year at a university, you can transfer from that community college, not to mention it's amazingly affordable. So yes, sometime in that January to June is also a good time to do one of your free community college applications. And one thing that I would say is make sure if you don't already have one, you have a personal email account that you check regularly, something that is appropriate. I like to tell people nothing with, say, for example, BOII, B-O-I-I-I, or 420 or something like that. You want to make sure it's an appropriate email address. And you also want to make sure it's not assigned by your high school. If it ends in at stu.sandy.net or at GUHSD or at gomperstudent.org or whatever, you're going to lose that email address when you graduate. And they want an email address like a Gmail that you can continue to access. So just kind of consider, make sure you have an email address. Okay, now we're going to get into financial aid, and that's going to take a little bit of time to explain the financial aid process and how to apply for it. Things like grants, loans, grants, loans, work study, and some scholarships. And then we'll also get into outside or private scholarships, and we'll also get into the applications themselves. All right, so what is financial aid? Financial aid is money that is given either by the federal government, the state government, a school like a college, or it could even be a private entity. This will help you pay for your education after high school. And when I say your education after high school, I'm including all kinds of college: university, in-state, out-of-state, public, private, 2-year, 4-year, trade school, vocational school. All of that it all falls under financial aid because you'll need money for most of those programs. The type of aid that when we are talking about financial aid, we're usually talking about grants, work study, and optional loans. Those are usually the 3 forms that financial aid comes in, okay? A grant is gift aid. It's free money you don't have to pay back. Work study means you're given an allotment per year that as a college student, you could get a job while in college, a part-time job, not full-time job, but you could get a part-time job and work study helps pay your salary. And then a loan is also something that if you fill out a FAFSA or a DREAM Act that the government might offer you a loan. That's something that you would have to pay back if you decided to accept a loan. And that is something that, although it's great that it can be offered to you and it's a great tool if you need it, I don't want anybody to think that filling out the FAFSA means you now have signed up for a loan. You haven't. You just see if you would be qualified for a loan. And if they offer you one, you can accept it or you can decline it. Okay. The general eligibility to actually receive this financial aid is you have to actually be enrolled in college classes. So for each quarter or semester, depending what kind of system your college has, usually you have to be enrolled at least half time, which for most colleges means at least 6 units per semester. It might be different if you're going to a school on the quarter, if you're going to a college that uses the quarter system. But usually 6 units, 6 to 12. 12 units is usually considered full-time, 6 is considered half-time. All right, so we believe that the priority deadline for you, if you're an 11th grader now, and that you will be entering 12th grade in the 24-25 school year, we believe that the priority deadline for the FAFSA and the DREAM Act is going to be March 2nd of 2025. So keep that in mind as that's your priority deadline, and you want to make sure you have filled out that financial aid form before March 2nd. What makes you eligible for federal aid? Like, why do some people fill out the FAFSA and they receive aid and some do not receive aid or they're not offered aid? You have to demonstrate what the government considers financial need. And the 2 main factors that they base this on is the household income, in other words, like the adjusted gross income of parents and sometimes students if the students have a job. And then the family size, how many people live in the house? And that can include students, cousins, grandparents. It doesn't always just include parent and child. Sometimes it can include various people. So based on the household income, the family size, and then they do also look if you have any assets or investments. But based on that, they come up with this formula for what is your financial need. You also have to be either a US citizen or an eligible non-citizen, and you might informally call that a green card. And again, enrolled in 6 units per semester. So this is for federal aid that comes from the federal government. If you do not have a social security number, like for example, if a student is undocumented, that doesn't mean that they don't qualify for any financial aid, but they don't qualify for federal aid from the federal government. They might qualify for state aid, such as the state of California instead. Okay. So what are the types of federal aid? The federal government offers the following types of aid. The first kind is the Pell Grant, and it's a grant. Remember, grant means great, it's gift. Grant, great, gift, okay? It does not need to be repaid. And is if you show financial need as calculated on the FAFSA, this is a grant that you can use for usually up to 4 years, every year for up to 4 years of college. That goes towards your college expenses, whether that's tuition or other things. But that Pell Grant is something that will help you pay for college, and it's from federal government. Another thing that you might qualify for, or you might not, but it's called work study. And does this need to be repaid? No, this is when you actually have a job and you earn this money through an hourly salary. And again, if you show certain financial need on the FAFSA, the school, meaning the college, grants you this option and you find a job. Normally it's an on-campus job, but not necessarily. CalSOAP employs a lot of college students and they go out to actual various high schools. But the work study does not need to be paid back in any way. It's money that you earn and that you actually get to keep in your paycheck and then use for whatever you need. They also might offer you a federal loan. Does this need to be repaid? Yes, it is a loan. A loan always means it will need to be repaid. Usually it means it needs to be repaid with interest. So if you do not get enough financial aid or have enough savings or have a job or have enough scholarships to cover the whole cost of college, that's when you might want to consider a loan. And if the loan comes from the federal government, just keep in mind that that's something that would need to be repaid. But these are the forms of federal aid that you might get from the federal government. Now, since we are in the state of California, we'll talk about additional aid that is California state aid and what that looks like. So how do you qualify for state aid? You have to fill out a FAFSA or DREAM Act. You have to demonstrate financial need based on the household income, assets, and family size. You have to be one of the following: either a citizen, an eligible non-citizen, a California resident or AB 540 eligible, or a DACA student, delayed action for childhood admission, and again, enrolled in 6 to 12 units, okay? So this covers, the state aid will cover what sometimes is not covered for undocumented students in the federal arena. There still might be state aid available for those students if they're going to college in California. It's not going to follow them. Federal funds will follow you anywhere in the US. A California funding, like a Cal Grant, is only for California colleges. So what is AB 540? AB 540 is not actually like any money. It's not a form of financial aid, but it's considered non-resident tuition exemption. So instead of being charged out of state public fees, like a community college, a CSU, and a UC, they all have two different sets of fees. One for if you are a resident of California, right? And then a different one if someone is an out-of-state or out-of-country resident. And then that tuition and fees, that's usually about 3 times the amount that the in-state is. So in order to meet requirements for AB 540 and make sure that you're getting in-state tuition, that just means that you have attended a California high school for 3 full-time years or completed 3 years of California high school coursework, that you've graduated from a California high school or the equivalent, that you register or enroll in an accredited California college, and that you submit a signed non-resident exemption request at the college. So it's not any form of money that you're receiving, it's just making sure that you can get in-state tuition instead of the much higher out-of-state tuition that public institutions charge. So what form does the California money take if you happen to qualify for California aid? The main, pardon me. The main aid from California is in the form of what they call Cal Grants, and it has to be used at a California college. Pardon me. You might be told that you qualify for Cal Grant A, B, or C. If you get Cal Grant A, this only covers a 4-year college or university's tuition and fee costs. That's what it has to go toward, not expenses like food and rent, but toward tuition and fees. The high school student must have at least a 3.0 GPA to qualify for Cal Grant. For Cal Grant B, the high school student has to have at least a 2.0 GPA, and this one can be used, for example, at a community college. Then there is Cal Grant C, which provides free money to students who are pursuing an occupational or technical program, whether that's at a vocational school or whether that's at a community college. Say that you want to get into welding, HVAC, hospitality, culinary arts, automotive technology. Those kinds of things are covered by financial aid. Okay, so there's no GPA requirement for this one, but these are all things that are specifically, they come from a state budget instead of a federal budget. But again, if it says grant, no matter what type of grant it is, grant means great. Grant is gift. Grant means you don't have to pay back. So if you're ever offered a grant, please accept it. All right. There are also some sources of additional state funding, and I'll give you an example. You might have heard something called the Promise Scholarship. This is something that all the community colleges, there's more than 100 of them in the state of California, offer something called the Promise. What this basically means is if you fill out either a FAFSA or a DREAM Act, okay, and you apply to that community college, okay, regardless of your family income size, even if it's higher and you think you won't qualify for anything, the Promise basically will agree for if you are a new community college student, like you have not taken classes there before, dual enrollment or CCAP is something different, but if you have graduated high school and you're starting college for the first time, basically they're saying, we will pay for up to 2 years of your tuition and fees at a community college. So at that community college, your entire freshman year full-time, your entire sophomore year full-time, the tuition and fees part is paid for. This is an amazing deal. The tuition is often the biggest part of a college expense. Yes, dorms are expensive. Yes, food is expensive. And yes, books and so forth can also be expensive. But one of the big costs is that tuition. All right. So they're basically saying, look, we're offering you free tuition at a community college for your first 2 years. That's called the Promise. And again, that's money that you do not have to pay back. Okay, it's considered grant or scholarship money. There's also a type of grant that is called the Chafee Grant. It's for any college student who was a foster youth before the age of 18. You can spend it on anything you see fit. And if you were at any time in foster care, like above the age of 13, say between the ages of 13 and 18, when you're filling out the FAFSA or DREAM Act, they'll ask you questions about that can automatically make you qualify for the Chafee Grant. And again, grant is great, doesn't need to be repaid. There's also something called the Middle Class Scholarship that we have here in California. It is only for UCs and CSUs, okay? It can be applied up to 4 years, okay? So a freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year in college. And if you are granted a middle class scholarship based on your income and family size, that must go toward tuition and fees. So the middle class scholarship isn't toward food or rent or anything like that. It's the one that just goes toward tuition and fees. But that's an example of more state available aid. And again, anything that says scholarship or grant does not need to be repaid. So if you're offered anything that says grant or scholarship, please accept it. Okay. So pretty much everyone either does one application or the other. Nobody fills out the FAFSA and the DREAM Act, okay? You usually do one or the other. And it's pretty simple to know which one you have to fill out, and I'll explain in the next slide. If the student has a social security number, then they fill out the FAFSA, okay? And that will help them find out any state and federal aid they're eligible for. If the student does not have a social security number, okay, then they are going to fill out the California DREAM Act application. This will let them know any state aid they are available for, but they won't be eligible for any federal aid. There is one other classification of student that maybe cannot fill out either form, and this is rare, but sometimes students, if you are on an immigrant visa, like say you're on an F1 or an H1 visa that might be through you or through your parents, like they might have a work visa and then a student visa for you. If that's your situation, that you're on a special visa, you might not be eligible to fill out either form. And unfortunately, you're considered a quote international student, and you have to find other means to pay, like outside scholarships or private loans or savings. This is rare, but it does happen. Every year we do encounter some students that they're not eligible for the FAFSA or for the DREAM Act. Because they are on a certain type of visa. But generally, almost everyone fills out the FAFSA or the DREAM Act. By the way, it doesn't matter what status your parent is, whether they have a social security number or not. It's what the student has. And students, if you have a social security number, you will fill out the FAFSA. Students, if you do not have a social security number, you would fill out the DREAM Act. Okay. So what does it look like to actually create an FSA ID for the FAFSA? So if FAFSA is the one that the student's going to fill out, students, you have a social security number, you're like, I'm ready to do this thing. I want to get my FSA ID now. You can even do it as early as right now. You go to studentaid.gov and you create an account, but it does take quite a few steps. And so I want you to know what they're going to ask you just to create the ID itself. So when you click on Get Started, they'll ask for your first name, middle initial, and last name. They'll ask for your date of birth. One of the most common mistakes we see on the application is a student accidentally enters their date of birth wrong, or their date of birth that they enter doesn't match what the school has or what the Social Security documentation has. They will also ask for your Social Security number. Your account is attached to your Social Security number, and you can only have one account. So remember your password. In other words, students and parents cannot share an email address and they cannot share an account. They each have to have their own FSA ID. You'll create a username that you will remember. Okay, like a lot of times it might be like your first name and a number or something like that. They'll ask for an email address that they'll be using to contact you. And again, we strongly recommend you do not use a high school generated email, but something you'll still have access to, like a Gmail. They'll ask you to create a safe password, and this is important. It's case sensitive, and it really is case sensitive. So it might require you to have an uppercase, a lowercase, a number, a special character. And this is something that I really strongly encourage you to either write down or save in your phone or take a picture of so that you do not lose it. This password is going to be important because you have to fill out the FAFSA not just once, but every year you're in college. Once a year, every year you're in college. So you're still going to need this sucker. It'll ask for your permanent address. It'll ask for your phone number, and they recommend that it is a mobile phone number because sometimes they'll send something like a text. Okay. Phone number is not technically required, but it's strongly, strongly, strongly recommended. They'll also ask for what is your communication preference? Like, do you want to be contacted by email or by text? And it will also ask for a language preference. So this information will be available in Spanish, Vietnamese, various other languages as well. They'll also ask you to choose a challenge question, and it might be something like, what's your mother's maiden name? What's the name of your first pet? Or what's your high school mascot? The answer is case or cap sensitive. And this is something that you would use to get access into your account if and when you forget your password. I know we all do it. We all have a million online accounts for a million things, and sometimes we just don't remember the password. But that's why they have challenge questions. So something like, what's your favorite color? What's the name of the first street you lived on? Something like that. You want to double check and make sure everything is correct. Again, very common mistakes. The name that the student uses on the FAFSA doesn't match the name that's on their Social Security number documentation, or it doesn't match what's in PowerSchool or what your school or district is using. So just make sure that things match, that you have the, your birth date is correct, your Social Security number, you didn't accidentally transpose two numbers, that everything is spelled. Like, if your last name is two names, is it a hyphen or is there a space in between them? Like, things like that are really important. They're very picky about making sure information matches exactly. Also, they will have a system for account recovery where they can text a 6-digit code to your cell phone. And that is something that's really helpful to have, so that if they're saying, is this your account? If you're logging in online, they might say, we've sent a code to your account within 30 minutes, please enter the 6-digit code that we sent. So that's, again, another reason it's very strongly recommended to have a mobile number if possible. All right. So hopefully the FAFSA and DREAM Act will be opening October 1st. That's what we expect. If it's not October, I think it will be later in the fall, like maybe it'll be later in October or November or December. But hopefully this year they have worked out the troubles with the FAFSA, and that it will be opening. At least we won't have to wait till January like we did this year. Okay. So another way to pay for college, let's say that you fill out the FAFSA or the DREAM Act, you find out all the grants you're getting, you find out any loans, and maybe you do or don't want to take a loan, but let's say you're still short. Let's say the college tuition and the total cost of attendance is still, you're, even if you get $10,000 a year, if the cost of attendance is $30,000 a year, you're like, well, my gosh, that's still $20,000 a year we have to come up with somehow through savings or through something. So I do want to mention that scholarships outside of the FAFSA and DREAM Act are a really, really good recommended thing. You can apply for multiple scholarships. You can sometimes be awarded and receive multiple scholarships, and you are allowed to accept financial aid and scholarships at the same time. And usually you can accept as many scholarships as you've earned. So if you might go into college getting certain federal money and certain state grants, and also getting a scholarship from your college or university, and also coming in with, say, 2 or 3 other scholarships that you just earned through outside organizations on your own. All of that gets applied to your financial aid account. And if it's quote unquote too much, if it's more than the college is charging, they will actually deposit that money back in the student's account. So you, the student, can use that money for whatever you need, whether that's health insurance, car payment, computer, books, whatever it is. Okay. So I strongly encourage, in addition to this federal or state form, that you also fill out scholarships. A great place to look for scholarships is to ask older students, hey, we heard you got a scholarship. Where did you get it? Where did you find it? Look on social media. Follow CalSOAP. We have a CalSOAPSanDiego.org. We have a pay for college section on our website. That includes a scholarship tab. And in that scholarship tab, we try to keep a running tally or total of all the scholarships we hear about. And although we include national ones and international ones, we also try to include things that are specific to our local schools and our local districts and our local cities and counties. So those are a little bit less competitive, because instead of competing with everybody, you're maybe just competing with people maybe in your city or your county, or even a small group as like at your high school. Okay, so definitely I recommend CalSOAPSanDiego.org is a great place to start looking for scholarships and seeing which ones you might want to apply for. I strongly encourage 11th graders, if you don't already have a College Board account online, it's free. Definitely create one. There are some things you can do through their Big Future program that are both just research, but also you can get your name. They have a monthly drawing, and every month they choose multiple, like dozens of names, to possibly get awarded a $500 scholarship. And then there's even larger scholarships. And if there's certain steps you take, like building a college list, adding to that list, finding scholarships, creating a scholarship list and adding to that list. Once you get to be a senior, filling out the FAFSA or DREAM Act, applying to college, all those steps, every time you do one of the 6 steps, it puts your name in this monthly drawing so that you might qualify for one of these scholarships. So I definitely recommend, again, if you don't have a College Board account, create one or recover that account if you've forgotten about it, and make sure you do those things to maybe get your name into a scholarship drawing. And it's nice because it's a scholarship that you don't have to, quote, apply to it. You don't have to fill out an essay. You don't have to have a certain GPA. It's not that, you don't have to do community service. It's not that type of scholarship. So I definitely recommend Big Future as a great one. If you would consider yourself from a low-income family, I would like you to check out calkids.org. That is where the government kind of gives you some seed money and puts your money in a California 529 savings plan. It can be as low, I think, as like $50 or $500, or up to $1,500, that once you start college, that money can be available to you to do whatever you want, spend it toward college expenses. All right, so sometimes people don't realize they actually have a CalKids, like they enter their parents' name and information and all that, and they find out, oh, wow, we have like $522 in our CalKids account, and that's scholarship money for you to use toward college when it's time to go. If you want a good national database where you can search scholarships nationally, I recommend fastweb.com. Pardon me. So basically with FastWeb, you put in your profile. I'm male, I'm female, I'm non-binary. You put in your ethnicity, you put in your cultural background. If you belong to any faith-based organizations, you include that. You include what you're interested in studying. You include if you have any special talents. You include if you're an athlete. All of these questions are going to ask about you. And then based on the information you enter, they're going to say, well, based on what you entered, we think these are some of the scholarships that you could apply to or you should apply to. All right. So fastweb.com is a really good one. I know I'm always saying be cautious of .com, .orgs are usually safe, or .edu, but be cautious of .com, but we have vetted fastweb.com and it is a legitimate scholarship platform. There's also one called raise.me. This is a little unusual. It kind of lets you earn micro scholarships to the colleges that accept raise.me funding. And that's when I say you can earn micro scholarships, it's by doing things like taking a little free financial literacy course online or entering that you've done something in the college search process. So I like raise.me. It's something that the students have some control in, and sometimes you can get a lot of money through raise.me. And then this is a really good one. We are partners with the San Diego Foundation. They are a strong, strong partner and supporter of CalSOAP. We support them and they support us. They are an awesome organization. Their website is sdfoundation.org. And it's kind of like they have one common scholarship application for hundreds of different scholarships that are really only open to students that are either in the city or the county of San Diego. So instead of, again, competing with students in the entire state or the entire country or the entire world, you're only quote unquote competing, or the only people applying are other students that are your exact same graduation year in San Diego County. That's a much smaller pool to choose from. And they have all kinds of organizations that come to them and say, hey, we have 500 a year, 1,000 a year, 4,000 a year that we want to give in a scholarship, and we would like it to go to a male athlete, or we would like it to go to a female African American student who's going to be studying science, or we would like it to go to someone who has performed community service, or this is specifically if the student has been in Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, Eagle Scouts, whatever it is. All these organizations locally, they go to San Diego Foundation, and who makes it easy for you. You're just filling out one application for them, and then they'll tell you based on that application, okay, this is the one or more than one scholarships that you qualified for or maybe earned. So don't forget about San Diego Foundation. Usually every year their application opens around January. Okay, so January of 12th grade, and it usually is due or closes sometime in March. So just be aware of that. I really encourage you to do San Diego Foundation and fill out their common scholarship application. All right, so what about the college applications themselves? Let's talk about that. The first thing you probably want to do is decide, well, what college am I going to attend? If you haven't decided yet at this point, and that's completely okay if you have not decided, or if you have no idea or no goal in mind, and it's wonderful if you have decided, all of those things are okay. But some good places to research. One is the website California Career Zone. The site itself is cacareerzone.org. This lets you look at budget, look at colleges, look at majors, all kinds of great things that are fun, that are geared towards you. It's free, and it's really helpful for students if you're trying to figure out, what should I major in? What do I need to study in order to get this certain job? Or what colleges cost this much, or this and that. California Career Zone is a great website. Another really good one is californiacolleges.edu. Now, obviously, this is just going to be for colleges in the state of California, but it does include vocational schools, community colleges, public universities like CSUs and UCs, but also private schools in the state of California, say like USC or Stanford or any number of, Harvey Mudd, Claremont McKenna, whatever. So it includes all colleges in California. PIG Future, which I mentioned before, it's part of College Board. That's a really great place where you can take career quizzes and college quizzes and find out about majors and things like that. And if you're specifically like, well, what should I major in? Under what major should I apply for college? Mymajors.com is really helpful for that. A couple things I will say about the major that you apply for. If the college you're applying to asks you to say, what major are you applying for? They almost always give you a first choice and a second choice. Please, 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 please fill out both the first and second choice. If your first choice is extremely competitive, selective, capped, limited, difficult to get into, you want to make sure your second choice is maybe not capped, not limited, or not as difficult to get into. I know there are some universities where every single major is impacted, okay, or selective, hard to get into, but it's so important to have both a first and a second choice. I strongly encourage you to do that. Okay. And then another thing to consider is that what if you want to go in undeclared? That's also considered a major, undeclared or undecided. And that's completely okay if that's your first choice. No problem. I just want to make sure everybody has at least two choices on their college applications, a first choice major and a second choice major. It's just always good to have a backup. It's always good to have options. What if you get in your first choice major and you start classes, it's your freshman year of college and it's your first semester and you're like, I am an engineering major, and you take an engineering class and you're like, I hate engineering. Guess what? You have time to change your mind. Usually most colleges let you change your major anytime your freshman year of college, your sophomore year of college, a lot of times all the way through your junior year of college. And a lot of times you don't have to make an absolute decision until somewhere close to your senior year of college. The average student does change majors. A lot of people find out once they start taking classes, they find a class or a subject they didn't know existed that inspires them, and they change their major to that. That's okay. That's expected. You can do that. Keep in mind that changing your mind a lot might mean taking some extra classes. It might mean, okay, well, to get my bachelor's, I thought it was going to take, 4 years, but maybe it would take like 4.5. Like maybe I need to add an extra quarter or semester in there, or maybe even a fifth year if I'm changing my mind a lot. But sometimes the general ed requirements, the freshman, sophomore year requirements, those are the same for many different majors. So it doesn't really impact you a lot until your upper division, your junior, senior year. So just keep in mind that I really strongly recommend you, if you're filling out a college application, that you have both a first and second choice major. Consider that you can change that major probably once you get to the college. And also consider that if you do change, that's okay. There are a few really impacted majors that's hard to change into. Like one of them, for example, is nursing. That's the only one I've heard that you absolutely cannot change your major and change into nursing. So there are some that are really impacted. Just be familiar with each college's programs if they have a really selective major. If your goal is to get a bachelor's degree, and it might not be, but if that's your goal, if you want at least a bachelor's degree, there are two different ways to get it that I'll point out. You could do 4+ years at a university, say like UCLA, let's say CSU San Marcos, say USC, the University of Southern California. You start there right out of high school and you do about 4 years there, and at the end you get a bachelor from that university. Another way you can get that same bachelor's is you could start at a local community college for about 2 years. Then you apply to transfer and finish your junior and senior credits at a university. Again, it could be public or private. It could be a UC or a CSU or a private university or even an out-of-state university. And you finish your junior senior year classes at that 4-year university. At the end, you get that same 4-year bachelor's degree from that university. There is no right or wrong way to do it. It's just different ways to do it. Some people, it's very important for them to start at a university because they really want that experience of living on campus in a dorm and starting to integrate into that college right away. However, what would be the benefit of a community college is that the tuition, remember with the promise in California, you basically have 2 years of free tuition. And even if you were paying it out of pocket, it's very inexpensive, very reasonable and affordable for a California resident, much less than even a CSU or a UC. So for some people, it's a financial decision, and having that first 2 years where tuition is basically paid in full, that's the benefit for them of starting at a community college and transferring. Or maybe they're not completely sure what they want to major in, and they would like a couple years of taking inexpensive classes to figure it out instead of having to decide when they're paying, $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 a year in tuition to figure it out. Okay. So these are the different college systems that we have in California. There are the community colleges, such as Mesa, City, Miramar, College of Continuing Ed. There are the CSUs like San Diego State and Cal State San Marcos. There's 23 of these in the state. And the last public system is the UCs, such as UC San Diego, UC Irvine, UCLA. So these three are all publicly funded, which means that they have different tuitions for residents and non-residents. There's also private colleges. And so, for example, we would say like University of San Diego, Point Loma Nazarene, USC, the University of Southern California. These are all considered private. They don't take tax money, and therefore they charge everyone the same tuition. Doesn't matter if you're in state, out of state, international, whatever. And so that's one of the big differences. And sometimes, unfortunately, that means they have the highest tuition. A lot of times they also have the biggest financial aid packages. All right. So whether you are applying to a community college, a CSU, a UC, a private vocational school, they're all going to have different requirements. I will say that the community colleges and the Cal State universities, they are mainly just asking you to input your grades, your GPA, and your classes, okay, what classes you took, what grades you got. But the University of California and the private and independent universities, they're usually looking for more information. For example, the UCs have what's called PIQs, personal insight questions, where they give you 8 prompts and you choose any 4, and then you write a 350-word response to 4 of those personal insight questions. They might ask about things like something you're passionate about, if you've done community service, if you consider yourself a leader, if you have a talent or skill. There's all these different prompts. And so they are looking also basically at kind of short essays, if you want to look at it that way. And they also look at things like your extracurricular activities, your community service, your athletics, your leadership, your involvement. And it's the same with the privates. Most of them use something called the Common App or Common Application for admissions, where you can fill out one application and then say, okay, I want this to go to Columbia. I want this to go to Dartmouth. I want this to go to Howard. I want this to go to Stanford. Okay. And then they, because if you're using the Common App, they also ask for an essay prompt that's a 650-word essay. And sometimes the even specific universities might have other essays that are just for that specific university. Vocational schools usually are not asking for any competitive things like they'll probably make sure that you have like a high school diploma. All right. So the community college application is free. You do have to be at least 18 or have a high school diploma, but that is as selective as it gets. It's a free application. It's open admission. If you apply on time, you will be accepted. For some 4U universities, it can get a lot more competitive. They will be looking at your GPA. They will be looking if you took any AP classes. Some universities even consider additional things like they might look for an SAT score. They might ask for extracurricular, community service, leadership, athletics. They might ask for essay or personal insight questions. So those are things, if you're applying to a university, remember the deadline for most of those is November 30th. So summer would be a great time to start thinking about, okay, where am I applying? Am I going to have to fill out a Common App essay? Am I going to have to respond to some UC PIQs? Can I get started and find out what the prompts are now and start writing those now? Yes, you can. They've already been released and you can start working on those right now if you'd like to get a jump start on this. All right. Okay, so the last thing I'm leaving you with is our social media handles. We are on Twitter, we are on Facebook, and then we are on Instagram at CalSoap San Diego. Again, this is where we try to promote and advertise any programs we're doing, any jobs or internships we hear about, any scholarships that we hear about, any opportunities. Also, CalSoap will be there for your senior year to help you fill out your FAFSA or DREAMAC. If you would like one-on-one help, and we try to offer it in a variety of languages, okay, not just English, but we have a lot of Spanish speakers and various other college students who speak other languages that will help you either online from your home, virtual, okay, very convenient, or in person, like at your student's school on a Saturday or during a school day or in the evening, where we can sit with a family and one-on-one go through the FAFSA or DREAMAC with them if they need help, and kind of help them one-on-one with that process. So if they say, well, my parents live out of the country, how do I enter their address? We have workarounds for that, okay? We've been doing this for a long time. So if you ever see anything like a college fair, a senior jumpstart, we're going to have some senior jumpstarts to get ready for senior year coming up as early as August, September, and October. Everything that CalSoap does is free. Our October college fair, which will probably be at Mesa College, that will be free. Our senior jumpstarts are free. Our Cash for College workshops are free. So I just want to make sure that people know that CalSoap is here. We'll continue to support you. We probably help 12th graders more than any other grade level because that's when it is college application and financial aid season. And so we will try to help you as much as we can. All right. Oscar, are there any questions that are in the Q&A that I haven't answered?
There haven't been any questions so far.
Okay. All right. Well, we are coming to the end of our hour. So I'm going to go ahead and conclude the presentation. I thank everybody for taking time out of their day to participate. I really wish you a happy summer. Good luck with your senior year. I'm here if you have any questions, you can contact me. And again, tomorrow on our website, calsoapsandiego.org, just look for that webinars blogs tab, and I'm going to include this recording as well as access to the slide deck so that you can have access to this yourself. Many thanks to Oscar for monitoring the Q&A, and thank you for coming tonight. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful night.